Yakuza 5 is an open world 3D beat 'em up with adventure and RPG elements, released in 2012 in Japan and localized recently in the West. So fans have been waiting for this game to be localized a long time, and I gotta say the wait is definitely worth it for fans of the series. But if you've never played Yakuza 5 or any other entry in the series before, I would actually recommend playing the previous games before jumping into Yakuza 5. But even so, you can still jump into Yakuza 5. Just know that Yakuza 5 has a big focus on story, so expect some lengthy cutscenes here and there. And there's a lot of returning characters and some references to the previous games. So Yakuza 5 features 5 playable characters this time around. You start off as playing as Kazuma Kiryu, who's known as the Dragon of Dojima by the Yakuza, and it's definitely legendary among them. But he's more frustrated and depressed this time around since he wants to get away from his Yakuza roots and start a new life as a taxi driver. And Kazuma is actually a really important character since he's been in the series since the beginning, and definitely has a lot of character development in this game, and it's definitely different than the previous games since he's definitely older and more tired this time around. And he takes a more traditional approach to combat compared to the other characters, using various punches and kicks. And you can pick up various objects throughout the game, like bikes, cones, swords, just whatever you can pick up to bash your enemies with. And the more you hit your enemies, the more you build up your heat meter, which lets you pull off special moves on your enemies that definitely do a lot of damage and are really satisfying to pull off. And you also play as Saejima, who returns from Yakuza 4 and actually has to go back to prison for 2 years since he wants to rule the Tojo clan and bring it back to its former glory. And he is slower than the other characters, but definitely stronger, and uses a lot of charge-based attacks and can pick up heavier objects than the other characters, like motorcycles or any other big heavy object you wouldn't expect any known person to use as a weapon. And you also play as Haruka, who was actually adopted by Kazuma Kiryu and has been in the series since the beginning, like Kazuma. But she doesn't actually fight anyone though, although she can have dance battles which play out similar to games like Dance Dance Revolution or Guitar Hero. And her section of the game has a bigger focus on story, and it's definitely slower than the other sections of the game, but I still enjoyed it even though her section of the game definitely wasn't my favorite. I mean, it was definitely a big departure from the series, but it was definitely pretty risky for the pretty big risk for the developers to take playing as Haruka, but I think it paid off, and her section of the game is worth playing and seeing through since there's a lot of light shed on the plot, and you learn more about the story, and you've never seen it from Haruka's perspective before, so her section of the game is definitely very different and somewhat rewarding, so keep that in mind. And Akiyama returns from Yakuza 4 as well as Saejima, who's known as the loan shark, who doesn't actually charge interest, so he's not your typical loan shark, and actually does have a pretty big connection to the other characters, and uses mainly kickboxing, and is actually very fast and rarely ever punches anyone. It's actually very satisfying to play, and it's definitely a fan favorite among many. And lastly, he plays Tatsuo, who was a former pro baseball player who's definitely fallen off and flat broke and owes a lot of people money, and he takes a more sluggish approach to combat and is actually really good with weapons, but refuses to use baseball bats since he respects baseball too much. So overall, Yakuza 5 actually has a lot of variety, and that's definitely one of Yakuza 5's biggest strengths. I mean, I definitely think Yakuza 5 has plenty of variety, so it's not like you're going to get bored just doing one thing in Yakuza 5 since there's just so much to do. I mean, there's so many side missions, and mini games to play. So, it's not like you're going to get bored with Yakuza 5, anytime soon. And, the game's actually really long, too. I mean, the game took me around 55 hours to beat. and I didn't even finish all the side missions and everything. I did do the majority of them, so it just goes to show how, how much depth there is to Yakuza 5. So Yakuza 5 is definitely well worth your money if you're into games like Yakuza 5. I mean, if you like what you see here on screen, or you think what I said about the game appeals to you, you should definitely check out Yakuza 5. Although there are a few shortcomings to Yakuza 5 I think are worth mentioning, even though I'm a fan of the series. I'm definitely not gonna lie to you and say this game is for everyone. So Yakuza 5, like I said, it does have a big focus on story, so cutscenes are often really long, so if you don't like games with a big focus on story, then you're probably not gonna like Yakuza 5, or beat 'em ups for that matter. And also worth mentioning is that there were a few changes made to Yakuza 5 from the Japanese release. Like the intro, for example, has different music than the original release, which I actually liked the change, but that's just me though. But also worth mentioning though is that the level up system in Yakuza 5 is actually different from Yakuza 4. I was actually a little disappointed with the change they made to Yakuza 5's level up system compared to 4. I mean, 4 actually gave you total control of what exactly you wanted to upgrade. But Yakuza 5 goes back to the more grid-based, linear level up system of the previous game. So I was a little disappointed by that, since I thought Yakuza 4's level up system was more satisfying. But even so, it's definitely not a deal breaker, and it is still satisfying to level up in this game, just not as much as Yakuza 4. And also, Yakuza 5 introduces a weapon level up system, which I actually don't think was done as well as it could have. I mean, I actually think the level up system was kind of pointless in Yakuza 5, since Yakuza 5 will often flat out refuse to let you use certain weapons in the game just because you're not a high enough level or whatever. And I actually thought that was kind of frustrating, not being able to use basic weapons like tasers, which you could use anytime in the previous games. So to me, it actually kind of came off as padding more than upgrade to the previous games. So I definitely think it could have been done better in this game. I mean, it's not a bad idea, it's just not done very well in Yakuza 5. And even so, weapons are still fun to use, just not as fun as the other games, since you have to do more grinding to use certain weapons instead of just picking up random weapon, any weapon you want, and using it. And even so, even with those few shortcomings, I think Yakuza 5 is still well worth your time. Even though the Yakuza series has always been a fairly low budget series, I mean, it's still pretty impressive what they were able to pull off with such a limited budget. I mean, the game does look pretty good, but definitely not as good as most games. But even so, the game offers far more than most games. So, take it or leave it. And honestly, I think the future of the series in the West actually does look promising. Even though Yakuza is definitely a niche series, I definitely do think there is an audience for the Yakuza games, and these games are definitely different than most games. So if you want to play something different, then definitely pick up Yakuza 5. I mean, it really does represent Japan in a great way, and is well worth your time, like I said. And overall, I mean, I really enjoyed Yakuza 5. I don't know if I would consider it my favorite entry in the series like other fans, but it's definitely a very worthy sequel to the series, and well worth your time if you're a fan of the series, if you haven't picked this game up already, or if you want to get into the series. So overall, I give Yakuza 5 an 8.5 out of 10. I mean, it's a really great game. Even with it, the few shortcomings I mentioned, there really aren't anything that holds the game back in a big way. So even so, the game is still well worth checking out. I mean, the game's not even full price either, and includes all the Japanese DLC, so that's nice. So yeah, definitely check out Yakuza 5 if you still have a PlayStation 3 lying around. So until then, I'll see you next time.